All right, hi everyone. I'm going to give you a little bit of chapter 13, kind of a lecture, just a mini lecture for researching and developing the support for public speeches. We will cover APA in class on Wednesday. We will also pick our speech order on Wednesday. So please make sure you are in class on Wednesday. All right, so chapter 13. Might help if I clicked on it. All right, let's go ahead and start with evidence and support and research. So when we are talking about research, we conduct primary or secondary research. Most of what y'all are going to do is going to be secondary research, meaning it's online research, it's library research. So you're using search engines, you're verifying sources, you're using library databases, references, peer-reviewed work. You are using sources that somebody else has put out there. They have conducted the research. It's credible, you just didn't do it yourself. Primary research are things that you do yourself. And I believe there's more than just interviews that we'll talk about. I think it's on the next slide as well. But we first talk about interviews. So you get information from other people, and you can either, there's a couple different types of interviews you can do. I'm not going to break them down because this isn't a research class, but you could do interviews based on guided, where I can ask you questions and prompt you as we go, or it could be interviews where I am only allowed to ask the question that is on my paper. It just depends on what type of interview you want. Surveys. So if there is a lack of published research and you want to learn about your audience's knowledge and attitudes regarding your topic, you can use surveys, asking them questions. How do you feel about X? How do you feel about Y? What would you think about implementing Plan Z? Right? You can ask these questions in ways that are going to get that information back to you. Moving forward into evidence, this is our material that is going to support the claims that we make, right? So we need to have our claims supported. You cannot give a speech without using evidence and support, okay? I'm going to go over the informative speech outline assignment with you in class on Wednesday, but look into what types of, not what types, look into how many sources you need. What types of sources do you think you're going to need for a topic? Don't forget, your topics are due by Friday, okay? So, functions of evidence. It can make your ideas more clear, so it gives your audience some understanding of what's going on. It can fortify your opinion, so you have an opinion about your topic. I think the Steelers are the best football team, right? I have this opinion, and then maybe I take some NFL analysts and they say exactly what I'm saying as well, right? It's fortifying my opinion. And it's also giving me credibility because I'm using good, credible sources that they've done the research or they're experts in the field. And because I know to look to them for information, I have credibility as well. Okay. So, a good way to do this is through statistics, using numbers to summarize lots of cases or demonstrating relationships, right? One of the biggest problems I see with stats is that people don't use them effectively. So I don't require visual aids for your speeches. That can be a blessing and a curse. If you want to talk about statistics, you almost have to have a visual aid of some sort, right? I want to talk about the number of people who have tattoos on Northwest campus. I surveyed 75% of all students on campus at Northwest, and of the 75%, 82% had tattoos. Of that 82%, 54% had more than one tattoo. That's a lot of numbers, all made up, of course, but you don't want to listen to a speech like that. So making sure you limit the number. You round off your numbers, right? So you could say things like 54. That's fine. But leaving it at 54 rather than 54.27, you don't need the other point numbers, unless there's a legitimate reason, which you could make a case for. Make sure they're timely, they're relevant, and that they're interesting, right? You don't want to just throw statistics in there for the sake of using statistics. Examples. So it's going to be a single instance that you use to make your point. It can be a way to add drama or personalize your information. So first, we're going to talk about undetailed examples. There are three that we will talk about in total. So undetailed are going to be brief references, quickly recount specific instances of something. I'll remember when we went to, I don't know what it's even called. Remember we went to the concert that SAC puts on last year, right? Um, that might be an undetailed example. Many of you know that SAC puts on a concert in the spring semester, but I'm not referencing anything specific. Okay. Next is detailed, so you do put more elaborate information in there. So this might be, oh my gosh, do you remember last year we went to the SAC concert and it was AJR? I don't know. They came here one year, I feel like. It doesn't matter. Anyway, right? I'm giving you more elaborate information. I'm giving you more details of things that here's what I'm talking about. I want to talk about the concerts that SAC puts on each spring semester, right? And then I want to talk about each of the concerts. I want to talk about who the artists were, what it took to get them here, whatever, right? A hypothetical example, the last kind we're going to talk about, is they're not factual, but it can add clarity and depth. So these are things that are not necessarily happening. They're not things that we have to actually choose from, but it can add clarity to understand a situation, right? So it makes more sense for parents to say, we can, um, we can take a bath after dinner or before dinner, right? It's not actually happening right that minute. It's not factual, but you're giving them somewhat of a choice and providing that example, right? So you're limiting their options. With hypothetical examples, we talk about, I think about like the two-party system, right? We often refer to politics in America as a two-party system. It's really not, but it's how we refer to it. Comparisons, so we just talk about things and the associations between them. Similes are going to be explicit, they are direct, and they use like or as. You're as dumb as a box of rocks, right? That's a simile because you're using like and as. Um, or you're using as, you're not using like in that one. Metaphor is implicit. It suggests a likeness. These two things have something in common, right? So, I just had an example and I can't think of it now. It's kind of where like when you say something like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, right? The death of somebody is like a loss, right? That's a metaphor. It's implied. We don't have to spell it out. Okay. All right. Questions. So we have questions and citations that are made by others. So we need to use ethical. I just said questions. I meant quotations. Oh my gosh. So sorry. These are the citations, right? We need to be ethical and effective. And I limit the number of quotations that students can use. You are only allowed to use at most two quotations. Everything else needs to be paraphrased. And in all honesty, I think everything should be paraphrased. It's much easier than directly quoting anyway. So you need to make sure your quotations meet three criteria. First, listeners know and respect the source. So we get this idea of the halo effect with knowing and respecting the source. We assume somebody's an expert in one area and that they're an expert in other areas because they're an expert in that area, right? So We tend to listen to people in the news a little bit more about things that they don't necessarily know a lot about because we give them more credit because of that halo effect. Okay. Accuracy. Are you quoting the actual quote? Are you interpreting it properly after you quote it? Because you do still have to paraphrase it. You do still have to tell us what it means. And you want to make sure you're using unbiased sources. That's, of course, for everything. Visual aids, like I said, I do not require them for the speeches. However, you are welcome to use them. I recommend not because, as dumb as it sounds, and I will talk about it in class, you will turn around and talk to the screen like this. And you'll look at the screen and you won't. It sounds really dumb, I know, but I recommend not using them. However, you are welcome to. So we use them to reinforce our ideas. You can use charts, graphs, photographs, short videos between 15 and 20 seconds, slides, computer graphics, physical objects, all make great visual aids. Guidelines for using visual aids, make sure that they are large and clear, simple and uncluttered, and safe and non-distracting. So with these first three, how my slides are is really how you want your slides to be. Minimal text. You don't want a lot of stuff going on. You want to make them easy to see and read for everybody. You also want to avoid visual overload. So the length of your speech, divide that by 2, add 1 to it, and that's the maximum number of visuals. So your speech is 5 minutes. Divide by 2, that's 2.5. So we just go down to 2, add 1. So you can only have up to 3 visuals. Sounds like a little amount, but it really does go a long way. Mechanical guidelines, I guess. Remove or cover your visual aid. So do put up a title page. And after you get done speaking, make sure you remove it. And you want to maintain your visual eye contact with your audience. Like I said, don't turn your back to your screen or to whatever you have going on the computer. You will not need to bring your computer. You will end up using my computer plugged in, and it's a whole thing. But you want to keep your eye contact with your audience. Okay. All right. Testing your evidence. There are 5 questions that you need to ask to test whether your evidence is effective and ethical. First, is there enough evidence to support your claim? This is sufficiency. Have you shown that your claim you're making, the Steelers are the best team in the NFL, right? Have I shown enough evidence to support that claim? That might mean you have to use over the required number of sources, okay? Is the evidence accurately presented? So quotes are, excuse me, I'm sorry. Quotes are verbatim. It's not taken out of context, right? You can only use at most 2 quotations. I say you shouldn't really use any. But you want to make sure that you are using direct quotes directly as they are, and you interpret them properly. Do not take their words out of context. Does the evidence relate directly to the claim it's intended to support? So is it relevant? Do not go find sources just to hit the minimum. I believe it's 2, right? You don't need to have that many sources. So make sure your sources are actually relevant. I do go in and check them. Is the evidence appropriate? Is it timely, right? So not only does it support what we say it's going to support, but it's relevant for the time as well. And is the evidence free of biases such as vested interest? So if there is a bias, is it explained? If there is not a bias, do they have impartiality? Making sure that they're actually putting good ethical information out there. All right, so that is actually where our slides will stop, and I will pick back up on Wednesday. So yeah, we will do just a brief little review and then go into APA. Ask questions where necessary, and I will see you on Wednesday. Stop share and